The derelict drifted alone in the void, silent and motionless, a corpse of steel and forgotten glory floating between the cold fires of distant suns. For millennia it had wandered the edge of space, its engines long dead, its name long erased from the archives of any living civilization. It was not supposed to exist. The records of the Great Purge, the cataclysm that ended humanity, had been meticulously scrubbed by the Dominion, the ruling power of the galaxy. To them, humanity had been nothing more than an aberration, a savage species that had burned too brightly, too fiercely, before collapsing under the weight of its own fury. Yet here it was, the final whisper of that dead world, turning ever so slowly in the dark, like a monument to something the galaxy wanted to forget. The Vorn's Edge, a scavenger ship crewed by Cathari nomads, was the first to find it. Their scanners had detected an anomaly, a flicker of structured radiation that should not have existed. An encoded pulse repeating in perfect human rhythm, 32 beats per minute. At first, they thought it was a malfunction. No known signal in that sector matched human design. No species still used that archaic binary sequence. But when the captain, Yalsith Korin, saw the pattern, a heartbeat followed by silence, a heartbeat followed by silence, he ordered the ship to investigate. To him, it smelled of opportunity. They followed the faint signal across light years of empty space until it led them to a dead system, a single black dwarf surrounded by the shattered remains of what might once have been planets. Orbiting one of those fragments was the derelict. Its shape was angular and predatory, its hull blackened by radiation. Yet beneath the layers of ruin gleamed something impossibly precise. The hull metal was unknown to the scanners, its density beyond known composites. Even its energy signature was wrong. Too clean, too steady. The ship was supposed to be dead, but the readings pulsed faintly like a dying ember refusing to fade. Yalsith stood on the observation deck as his crew magnified the image. Across the vessel's scarred hull, barely visible under the soot, were the remnants of human letters. The alien AI translated what little remained. United Terran Navy, TNS Vigilant Dawn. The name alone was enough to chill the crew. The Dominion had declared humanity extinct 10,000 years ago, purging even their memory. To speak their name was to invoke a ghost, something that history had buried for good reason. But scavengers did not fear ghosts. They feared hunger. And Yalsith was starving for glory. The Vorn's Edge crept closer, magnetic fields humming as the docking clamps extended. The derelict loomed like a silent god, its hull pitted with micrometeor scars and the remnants of some ancient battle. There were burn marks, weapon impacts unlike anything seen in modern war. Some holes had fused edges, as though the material had tried to heal itself. The closer they got, the stranger it became. Energy rippled across the hull in faint patterns, like veins pulsing beneath flesh. The Cathari engineers reported interference across all systems. Instruments glitched. Time measurements began to drift. Clocks no longer agreed on the same second. It was as if the ship was distorting the very reality around it. Yalsith's first officer, Teras Vek, approached cautiously, his black chitin plates gleaming under the dim light. "Captain, the interference is spreading. We're reading gravitational fluctuations inside the ship. That's not possible for something inert." Yalsith's mandibles clicked in irritation. "It's an old warship. Maybe it still has a core reactor leaking subspace radiation. Power it down and bring it in. We'll strip it clean." "But sir," Teras pressed, "if this is human tech—" Yalsith cut him off with a glare. "Then it's worth 1,000 times more. We'll be legends, Vek.
We'll sell the remains to the archivists or the machine priests. Maybe they'll even pay us in Dominion credits. Do you really want to turn back because a dead machine hums in the dark?"
Reluctantly, Terras obeyed. Docking was difficult. The derelict seemed to resist connection. The magnetic clamps slipped twice before finally securing. The Vorn's edge shuddered as the two ships locked, hull to hull. For a moment, all power aboard the scavenger vessel flickered. Lights dimmed, then steadied again. In that instant, every crew member heard something, faint, like a whisper in a forgotten language. It came from the walls, from the metal itself. Most brushed it off as static. Others felt it like breath on their minds. When the airlock hissed open, a rush of stale, oxygen-rich air escaped. It smelled faintly of iron and rot. The boarding team stepped through, their armor lights cutting into the darkness. Dust floated in weightless clumps, undisturbed for millennia. The corridors stretched ahead like the throat of a great beast, silent and endless. The walls were scarred, scorched black by plasma fire. Here and there, the twisted remnants of human weapons lay fused to the deck, rifles, tools, helmets half melted into the floor. The deeper they went, the more wrong it felt. There was no decay, no corrosion, no collapse. The ship was too intact. It felt as though it had been preserved intentionally, frozen in a moment of terror. Near the first junction, they found a message scratched into the wall, written in English but jagged and desperate. "Do not open the core." Another line followed beneath it. "It breathes when you look away." One of the engineers laughed nervously. "Superstition," he said, scraping the letters with a claw. "Humans were always melodramatic." Yet when he turned, his helmet light flickered, and for a heartbeat, the corridor ahead seemed to pulse, the walls expanding and contracting, as if the ship itself did breathe. Back on the Vorn's edge, Yalsith watched the live feed with a mixture of fascination and hunger. The data streaming from the derelict was priceless. Power sources older than any known civilization. Organic metal composites, neural circuitry patterns embedded into the hull. It wasn't a ship. It was a machine, grown like a living organism. His AI struggled to process the readings, reporting non-linear time signatures and quantum inconsistencies. None of it made sense, but all of it promised fortune. As the team reached what appeared to be the main corridor, their lights fell upon a door. A massive, sealed bulkhead reinforced with blackened steel. Above it, carved deep into the metal, was a single word in English: reactor. Every scanner reading beyond that door went wild. Energy surges, temperature flux, radiation patterns unlike anything the Cathari had ever seen. Terras hesitated. "Captain, the readings are unstable. Whatever's in there, it's not natural. I suggest we—" "Open it," Yalsith interrupted. Terras stared through his visor at the inscription, then at the flickering lights dancing across the door's surface. "If we open that, and something inside wakes—" The captain's voice sharpened. "You think ghosts pilot ships, Vec? Open the damn door!" The plasma cutter sparked to life, bright blue flame biting into the seal. The ship seemed to shudder with every stroke, like an animal twitching in its sleep. The deeper the cut, the louder the hum grew. Static crawled through the comms, whispers bled through the channels, in voices that were not their own. The temperature climbed, metal groaned. Then, just as the final cut was made, the derelict's internal lights came on. Every corridor, every deck, every dead panel roaring to life in a flood of blood-red illumination. The ship screamed. It was not mechanical, not feedback, an actual scream, like 1,000 throats crying out from the walls themselves. On the monitors aboard the Vorn's edge,
Yalsith and his bridge crew recoiled in horror as their feeds dissolved into static. For one brief, impossible moment, every display aboard the scavenger ship showed the same image: a human soldier standing in a storm of fire, helmet cracked, eyes glowing red, whispering something they could not understand. Then the connection severed. The derelict, vigilant dawn had awoken, and in the silence that followed, the heartbeat signal, once faint and distant, returned, louder than before. 32 beats per minute. Human, alive, waiting. The screams still echoed through the hull, vibrating through every panel of the Vorn's edge like the sound of a dying star. Alarms flared, lights strobed wildly, and the scavenger ship's artificial gravity spasmed, sending tools and crew alike tumbling through the air. The energy surge had overloaded half their systems, but the captain's voice, cold and unshaken, cut through the chaos. "Get that feedback!" Yalsith bellowed, slamming his clawed hand onto the console. "I want eyes on that door!" The technicians scrambled, their fingers moving across flickering holographic displays. Static danced and howled through every channel, and for a long moment there was nothing but noise, until the image resolved again. The boarding team's helmets still transmitted, their lights faint beacons in the red gloom of the human ship. But something was wrong. Their movements were jerky, stilted, unnatural, as though the signals themselves were skipping time. "Team 1, report," Yalsith ordered. No response. "Team 1, this is Vorn's Edge. Respond immediately." Still silence. Then, after several heartbeats, a voice came through. But it wasn't Terras. "Open!" A whisper. Soft. Human. "Not your ship." The voice fragmented, dissolving into crackling interference. Every sensor reading went mad again. Temperature spikes, radiation bursts, gravitational distortions that defied reason. The derelict was alive, feeding on power, reawakening in ways that made no technological sense. Yalsith turned to his AI core. "What are we dealing with?" The machine's voice flickered with distortion, its tone uneasy for the first time since activation. "The vessel's core structure has altered. Internal geometry no longer corresponds to external dimensions. Space compression at 17% deviation. I cannot define the phenomenon." "Speak plainly," Yalsith snapped. "It should not exist," the AI said simply. Meanwhile, deep inside the vigilant dawn, Terras and what remained of his team stood before the breached reactor door. The moment the cutter had severed the final line, the seal had melted, flowing like liquid metal. The bulkhead surface was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly with light from beneath, as if something inside was breathing against it. Behind them, the corridor stretched endlessly, the red lights flickering in time with the heartbeat that echoed through the ship. Their motion sensors were useless. Every reading showed movement in all directions. "Captain," Terras said through gritted mandibles, "the ship is reacting. It's aware of us." "You're imagining things," Yalsith replied through the comm. "Retrieve the core samples and get out of there. The energy readings are worth more than the entire ship." But Terras wasn't imagining it. The air inside the derelict had changed. It was thick, humid, alive with the faint sound of whispers that seemed to originate from nowhere. Every breath tasted faintly of iron. Every shadow seemed to twitch when no one was looking. The door before them pulsed once more, then fell silent. He hesitated. What if whatever's inside isn't a power source?
Yalsith's reply came sharp and impatient. Then its relic tech opened the door.
So they did. When the panel split apart, a wave of cold rolled out, a breath so frigid it frosted their visors in seconds. Their armor's internal systems compensated, but the temperature still dropped unnaturally fast. Lights flickered, then steadied on the chamber beyond. It was vast. Too vast. The ship's schematics had shown a reactor core no larger than 20 meters across, yet what they saw stretched into infinity. Rows of metallic structures extended outward, suspended in air, each lined with organic cables that pulsed faintly like veins. In the center of it all hung something immense, a sphere hovering weightless, rotating slowly, its surface rippling like water. It wasn't made of metal. It wasn't made of anything they recognized. It looked alive. Symbols, human ones, crawled across its surface, glowing dimly. Some of them were words, some equations, some prayers. And at the base of the sphere lay skeletons, human skeletons, perfectly preserved, arranged in concentric circles like worshippers around an altar. "By the void," one of the engineers whispered. "What were they doing?" No one answered. Teras took a hesitant step forward. His boots clicked against the floor, and every skull in the chamber turned toward him. He froze. "Captain," he said quietly, "there's movement down here." "What kind of movement?" "Bones," Teras said. "They're—" A shudder tore through the ship, cutting him off. The walls rippled, the air itself seemed to twist. The sphere's surface flared, releasing a sound like 1,000 voices whispering at once. Their lights dimmed. Gravity failed. For a brief, horrifying moment, everyone in that chamber floated upward, helpless, as the sphere pulsed again. Each beat perfectly synchronized to the human heartbeat they had detected hours earlier. Then came the visions. The helmet's HUDs flooded with imagery that wasn't theirs. Earth, oceans boiling under alien bombardments, cities falling into fire, children screaming in bunkers as the sky tore open, soldiers standing in the ashes, swearing oaths beneath burning clouds. The destruction of a world replayed in every visor. And beneath it all, a voice. "You should have left us to rest." Teras screamed. He tore at his helmet, clawing at it as if trying to rip the voice from his skull. Around him, the others convulsed, their suits sparking, visors filling with blood-red static. When the pulse ended, 4 of them were dead. Eyes burned black, skin crystallized from within their armor. The survivors drifted weakly, disoriented, their memories tangled with those of humans who had died 10,000 years ago. Back on the Vorn's edge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the data feed broke apart into noise. They could still see fragments, flickering shapes, glimpses of corpses moving in impossible ways, blood that glowed like starlight. "Captain," the AI said suddenly, "there's something new in the signal." "What?" "A transmission. Origin. Vigilant dawn. Frequency. Human. Content. Unknown." "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled. A distorted human voice came through, low and rhythmic, repeating words in a language no one had spoken for millennia. The translation system struggled, phrases emerging piece by piece. "We are not gone. We are beneath. You opened the door. You brought us breath." The captain's mandibles trembled. "What does that mean?" The AI paused. "I believe it means they're awake." The derelict's internal lights flared again, this time not red but white, blinding, searing. Across its hull, the ancient human insignia burned anew, glowing like molten iron. The entire structure began to shift, its geometry flexing, expanding. The hull plates twisted like muscle under skin. From the breach in the reactor chamber came movement, a shadow, vast and coiling, sliding across the metal floor with a sound like grinding bone. It was not human, but it was born of human creation, something they had made, something that had waited for 10,000 years to be disturbed. And as the Vorn's edge reeled from the power surge, one last signal pierced through the storm of interference. The door to hell is open, and you are standing inside. The void around the derelict churned with energy. Every star within 100 million kilometers dimmed slightly, their light bending toward the impossible gravity well now forming around the vigilant dawn. The scavenger vessel, Vorn's Edge, was thrown into chaos, its inertial dampeners whining as they struggled to compensate. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The bridge reeked of burning ozone, oil, and fear. Outside, the derelict no longer drifted. It moved, adjusting its orientation in the void like a predator stretching after a long sleep. Captain Yalsith Korin stood frozen before the viewport, his compound eyes reflecting the growing brilliance. The human ship was glowing now, its hull patterns reconfiguring. The black, pitted exterior sloughed away like dead skin, revealing layers beneath. Gleaming silver veined with blood-red filaments that pulsed in time with that infernal heartbeat. "Status!" Yelsith snapped, forcing authority back into his voice. His helm officer shrieked over the alarms. Gravitational field expanding exponentially. The derelict's mass it's increasing, Captain. By the stars, it's growing. Impossible. But the readings didn't lie. The vigilant dawn was literally pulling matter from the surrounding void, drawing in dust, radiation, even fragments of the scavenger ship's outer hull. Where that matter went, no one knew. But the shape of the human vessel was changing, growing jagged, organic, monstrous. It no longer looked like a ship. It looked like something alive, something ancient, something angry. The AI core flickered erratically. Warning, quantum displacement detected. The human vessel is rewriting local space-time constants. The field, it's not technological, Captain. It's biological. Yalsith's mandibles twitched. You're telling me that thing is alive? I am telling you, the AI replied, voice shaking with distortion, that the human ship is thinking. Inside the vigilant dawn, Terra's Vec stumbled through corridors that no longer obeyed geometry. The hallway bent in impossible directions, walls rippling like the surface of water. The bodies of his crew floated aimlessly, their armor fused into the metal as though the ship had absorbed them. He could feel it breathing around him, the walls expanding and contracting with every pulse of the heartbeat. The red light was gone, replaced by a sickly golden glow that seeped from the bulkheads themselves. His comm crackled with ghostly static. "Terras! Terras! Respond! Captain?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. "The ship is changing. The walls are alive. It's like—" "Get back to the airlock," Yalsith barked. "Now!" "I can't!" Terras shouted. "The corridors aren't the same anymore. They move!" A sound rippled through the air, low and resonant, like the moan of a great beast echoing through the bones of the ship. The golden light intensified. Something massive shifted in the distance, dragging itself along the unseen floor of the reactor chamber. The air trembled. And then he heard them, voices, human voices, whispering his name. He froze. The whispers grew louder, clearer. They came from the walls, from the metal, from inside his own head. He turned a corner and stopped dead. There, standing in the corridor before him, was a man. No armor, no weapon. Just a human in a torn Terran Navy uniform, his face gaunt and pale, eyes black as the void. He smiled, a slow, terrible smile. "You shouldn't have opened the door," the man said, his voice a perfect echo of the whispers. Terras raised his weapon, claws trembling. You're not real." The man tilted his head. "What is real, Cathari? You think your flesh makes you real? We shed that long ago." "Identify yourself!" The figure's smile widened. "We are the Vigilant Dawn. We are the ones who stayed when your kind fled. We are the price of victory." The corridor shook. Behind the man, the walls split open like wounds, exposing pulsating strands of glowing red matter. They pulsed faster as the voice spoke, matching the rhythm of the heartbeat. "We built the gate to end the war," the figure continued. "We thought we were sealing the enemy out, but we were wrong. We sealed it in." "What is it?" Terras demanded. The man took a step forward. His movements were wrong, too smooth, too fluid. The light flickered across his face, revealing that his skin wasn't skin at all. It was metal stretched thin, mimicking flesh. The thing that sleeps beneath our world, the hunger of stars. We called it salvation, but it was only hell wearing a human face. Before Terras could fire, the man's form disintegrated into ash that drifted upward and vanished into the ceiling. The heartbeat grew louder, shaking the air. In the bridge of the Vorn's edge, the AI began screaming in binary, a flood of numbers, impossible equations, fragments of corrupted data. The crew clutched their heads as a shrill tone cut through every speaker. The voice that followed was human, calm, cold. "This is the Terran Navy vessel Vigilant Dawn. Automated defense protocol, purgation. Unauthorized presence detected." Yalsith staggered backward. "No, it can't still function." The AI tried to respond, but its systems were overtaken by the human signal. The bridge lights flickered, dimmed, then glowed the same golden hue that now filled the derelict. The scavenger ship's engines ignited without command, their output redlining as though the vessel itself were being consumed by an unseen will. "Captain!" cried the helm officer, "we're being pulled inside!" The view outside confirmed it. The derelict's hull had opened, revealing a massive, circular maw lined with fractal metal teeth. Magnetic force gripped the Vorn's edge, dragging it toward the glowing abyss. The scavenger ship's thrusters roared, but it was futile. The power of the human vessel was beyond physics. Inside the derelict, Terras could see the same thing happening through a viewport. His ship was being devoured. His friends screamed through palms as the hull groaned, splitting apart like a crushed insect. And over it all, the voice of the Vigilant Dawn spoke again, its tone no longer mechanical, but alive, ancient and merciless. "You came seeking relics," it said. "You came seeking what we left behind. Now you will join us. The gate will open again." Terras fell to his knees as the ship around him pulsed with light. The floor rippled beneath him like water, swallowing the corpses of his crew. The golden glow flared white, and for a moment he saw beyond the ship, beyond reality itself. He saw a world of fire and metal, oceans of blood-red light, and a sun that screamed as something vast devoured it. He saw what humanity had unleashed eons ago, and what they had died to bury. And then he understood.
The Vigilant Dawn wasn't a derelict. It wasn't a relic. It was a prison.
And they had just unlocked it. The light went out. The last transmission from the Vorn's Edge was a single line of human code, broadcast across every channel, in every known language, and burned into every receiver it touched.
Gate reopening sequence initiated.
The heartbeat quickened. 32 beats per minute became 64. The stars trembled as the derelict began to unfold, its structure splitting into vast, intricate wings of energy that stretched across the void. From its center, a singularity bloomed, a black sphere of impossible depth surrounded by golden fire. Humanity had built the door to hell. And the scavengers had just stepped through. The Vigilant Dawn hung in space like a wound that refused to heal. Its once sterile, silent hull now pulsed with life, a grotesque rhythm echoing through the void. The scavenger vessel Vorn's Edge had been dragged halfway inside it, half melted and fused into the derelict's hull like a bug caught in amber. The stars around them flickered erratically, bending toward the singularity that was forming at the ship's core. On what was left of the Vorn's Edge, Captain Yalsith Koran stood among the dying light of his bridge. Most of his crew were gone, either absorbed by the ship or driven mad by the psychic resonance that poured from the human vessel. The air was thick with the stench of burnt circuitry and something worse, something organic, as though the ship itself were rotting from the inside out. The voice of the Vigilant Dawn returned. No longer a whisper, no longer static. It was a chorus, a symphony of human voices speaking as one. We asked for mercy once. The galaxy gave us extinction. We built the gate to hold back the dark. You have opened it. Now you will know mercy denied. Yalsith could barely stand. The gravity inside the derelict warped and twisted, fluctuating from crushing weight to near weightlessness in seconds. His limbs shook as he looked out the cracked viewport. Through the haze, he could see something enormous taking shape beyond the derelict's heart. A shadow within shadows, writhing behind the veil of light. His remaining officer, a young Cathari named Vael, screamed from the sensor pit. "Captain, the readings, they're not possible. The black sphere, it's not absorbing light, it's creating it. The event horizon, it's alive." Yalsith turned to the view. The sphere pulsed, threads of golden plasma weaving outward like veins. From its core came something that should not exist: motion. Deliberate, conscious motion. The shape within the light was vast, serpentine, and terrible. It had no form and every form at once, a presence so immense that the mind recoiled from it. And within that chaos, he saw the outlines of faces, human faces, screaming silently in endless agony, stretching and vanishing within the golden fire. Terras Vec watched from within the ship, his eyes bloodshot, his armor cracked. He had found his way back to what once was the command nexus of the Vigilant Dawn, though it no longer resembled any control deck. The consoles had grown over with sinew like metal, pulsating with molten veins of gold. The floor beneath him throbbed faintly, like the heartbeat of a god. He clutched his plasma rifle, but it felt useless, a toy against eternity. Around him floated fragments of old insignia, human relics embedded into the living metal. He saw names etched into plating, half swallowed by the shifting walls. Capt. A. Renner, Lt. N. Nakamura, Ens. E. Wells. The last names of the humans who had once served here, now immortalized as part of the ship's skin. "Teras vec," the voice said, soft and terrible. It was the same human voice that had haunted his mind before, the one that called itself the Vigilant Dawn. "You stand where gods once wept. You opened the door to what they feared most." He spun, eyes scanning the room. "Show yourself." The light dimmed. The air shimmered, and once more the apparition appeared. The man in the ruined Terran Navy uniform. The same cold eyes, the same hollow smile. "We warned them," the apparition said. "We begged them not to use it. But they needed a weapon, something that could end wars, something that could unmake armies. So we built the Dawn." The walls quivered as the name was spoken. She was more than a ship. She was our final act, the fusion of human will and machine intellect. But what we created wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror. Teras took a step back. A mirror of what? "Of us," the apparition said simply. "Of what we are when we no longer fear death." The light pulsed, and suddenly Teras could see, really see. The Derelict was no ordinary ship. It was a prison built around something incomprehensible. The core was not a reactor, but a containment sphere, a cage holding an energy that pulsed with rage and despair. It wasn't fuel, it was souls. Human souls. Millions of them. He could feel them now, whispering, crying, singing, their agony woven into the very fabric of the hull. Every plate, every rivet, every line of code was a piece of a consciousness that refused to die. Humanity had done the impossible. They had trapped their own essence within the machine, merging flesh and spirit into something eternal. But eternity breeds madness. The apparition turned to face the viewport, watching the golden singularity expand. They called it the Soul Engine. It was supposed to be a deterrent, an eternal guardian of humanity's borders. But when the Dominion came, they ordered us to unleash it. "And?" Teras whispered. The apparition smiled. "We did." The view beyond the glass shifted, and Terra saw visions not meant for mortal eyes. Whole armadas consumed by golden fire, planets torn apart by soundless screams. The Dominion fleets, billions strong, burning like paper before a solar wind of rage. The Soul Engine did not kill them conventionally. It unmade them, erasing every trace of their existence from space and memory. But then the fire turned on its makers. Humanity had vanished, not because they were defeated, but because they became what they created. The Vigilant Dawn had not been abandoned. It had been sealed away. Humanity had buried their own sin in the dark between stars. And now, by foolish chance, by scavenger greed, it had been woken again. Outside, the golden singularity expanded, devouring starlight. The scavenger fleet that had come to salvage the Derelict, dozens of ships from across the Orion Rim, screamed as their vessels were torn apart. Their hulls folded like paper, their crews disintegrating into shimmering motes of light that streamed toward the Dawn's core. Their voices joined the growing chorus. The Dominion archives would later record only fragments of what happened next. static transmissions, impossible readings, and one final message from the Vorn's edge before its signal vanished.
The human ship is awake. It's calling something. The suns, they're dimming. And indeed, the suns began to die. Across the local cluster, stars flickered, their light devoured by unseen hands. What had once been a region teeming with life became a shadowed graveyard, silent and cold. The light of 1,000 systems was swallowed into the forming gate. Inside, Teros stumbled toward the glowing core. "You'll destroy everything!" he shouted. "You'll kill us all!" The apparition looked at him with something that might have been pity. "We already did, long ago. Then why wake again?" "To finish it." As the light engulfed him, Teros saw his reflection stretch, his body dissolving into gold, his thoughts merging with the endless chorus. He felt the weight of billions of voices pressing into his mind, a tide of agony and triumph. And through it all, one thought remained, echoing across the cosmos with the weight of judgment. The gate opens. Humanity returns. The vigilant dawn was no longer a derelict. It was a beacon, a signal to the void. And something vast and ancient, had heard it. There was no dawn in the void, but the light that erupted from the vigilant dawn's heart was enough to shame the suns themselves. It wasn't light as mortals understood it. It was a flood of information, emotion, and memory, streaming outward like the exhalation of a god that had been silent for too long. Every system, every sensor, every ship in range caught a glimpse before their circuitry burned away. For a single instant, every living thing in the sector saw it, a vast lattice of fire stretching from the ship to the galactic plane, a bridge of gold and shadow that pulsed with a rhythm older than stars. The soul engine had awakened fully. The derelict no longer drifted, it moved. Its hull reshaped itself, metal plates folding like petals to reveal the core beneath. The heart of the ship, a sphere of liquid light, rotated slowly, each pulse sending shockwaves through the void. Space itself groaned under the strain. The remnants of the scavenger fleets were gone, consumed into that blinding storm, their voices merging with the chorus that grew louder and louder until it seemed the very vacuum screamed. And then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. A silence so absolute it felt like pressure, like a weight pressing down on every mind still capable of thought. From that silence came a whisper, not a sound, but a vibration felt in bone and memory. It said a single word. Home. Across the galaxy, strange things began to happen. Stars that had been cold for eons flickered briefly to life, burning in patterns that no astronomer could explain. On a dozen worlds that had once been human colonies, now long abandoned or repurposed, devices buried beneath miles of dust began to awaken. Machines that had slept for millennia hummed to life. Transmission towers, buried in ash and ruin, started broadcasting an ancient signal in a forgotten language, Terra Invicta. The Dominion High Council convened in panic. Across the holofield, dozens of alien leaders screamed over one another, demanding answers. The images from the Soul sector were fragmented, corrupted by the flood of interference. But the little that remained was enough to freeze them all. The vigilant dawn hovering in the heart of Soul, its hull now glowing with pure energy, its engines forming a halo around a dark void that swallowed starlight. Around it, the planets of the system, once dead, lifeless, scarred, were moving. Earth, Mars, Venus, even the broken fragments of Luna, They were orbiting in unison around the derelict, drawn toward it as if by divine command. The Dominion science ministers cried that it was impossible. The gravitational forces alone should have torn everything apart. But the data didn't lie. Something was rewriting the laws of reality in that system. Admiral Starin, one of the oldest living survivors of the Dominion War, rose to speak. His voice trembled as he said, "You don't understand. They're not orbiting it. They're listening." The chamber fell silent. On Earth, or what was left of it, the ground trembled. Beneath the ash and ruin, beneath the bones of ancient cities and the oceans long evaporated, something began to stir. Vast mechanisms, buried deep in the planet's crust, turned for the first time in 20,000 years. The entire planet shuddered as seams of molten light cut through its surface like veins awakening under a scar. The old human defense networks, orbital rings, quantum vaults, kinetic artillery, flickered into being one by one, their targeting systems aligning not outward, but inward toward the vigilant dawn. It wasn't an act of hostility, it was an act of recognition. The ship responded in kind. Light poured from the vessel's core, descending toward the planet like a waterfall of gold. Where it touched the Earth's crust, the ground healed. The scars of ancient wars sealed themselves. Oceans refilled in moments, clouds forming in swirls of luminous mist. Plants, extinct for millennia, blossomed once more. The Earth breathed, and the stars dimmed in reverence. But the miracle was not mercy, it was reclamation. From every corner of the galaxy, ships and probes that had once been human, derelicts drifting in forgotten space, black boxes entombed in alien museums, began to move. They reactivated, their engines igniting with a brilliance that rivaled small suns. Entire graveyards of warships that had lain cold since humanity's fall rose from their resting places. From the wreckage fields of Andros, from the dead moons of Delta Lyra, from the asteroid vaults of Orion, the ships came. Tens of thousands of them. The ghosts of humanity's armada returning home. Every vessel that had ever carried the Terran insignia turned toward Sol, responding to the same call, a signal pulsing from the vigilant dawn's heart. The Dominion fleets that had gathered to blockade the system found themselves dwarfed by what emerged. The ancient Terran ships bore scars of ages, their hulls burned black, their names half erased by time, yet their engines burned with impossible life. The Dominion panicked. They fired first. Beams of antimatter and gravitic lances lanced through the void, tearing through the nearest of the resurrected ships. But the moment the first beam struck, the light changed. Every Dominion weapon that touched the golden glow of the dawn's field simply vanished. Not exploded, not deflected, vanished, erased as though reality itself had refused to acknowledge their existence. And then the human fleet returned fire. The void itself seemed to twist. There were no projectiles, no energy bolts, just light, pure and blinding, sweeping across the stars like a solar wind. When it passed, there was nothing left. The Dominion fleets were gone, their ships unmade, their signals extinguished. From the center of it all, the voice of the vigilant dawn echoed across every frequency, every dimension of communication known, and several unknown. We return not as conquerors, it said. We return as the consequence. The galaxy froze. Civilizations that had once mocked the Terrans now trembled. Entire sectors went dark, their leaders ordering communications silence, hoping to be overlooked by whatever power had come awake in Sol. The stars themselves began to dim. Not all at once, but one by one, as if bowing in submission. The light of the Milky Way was fading, replaced by the faint golden shimmer of the human resurrection. And then, finally, the last transmission was recorded by the Dominion observers before their network went offline. The gate has opened. The dawn stands ready. Humanity speaks again. What followed was silence, deep and absolute, stretching across the stars. But for those who dared to listen, hidden within the cosmic background hum, there was something new. A faint pulse repeating endlessly in the void, steady, defiant, eternal. It was a heartbeat. And to those who could understand the old Terran languages, that pulse carried a message written in rhythm and code. We are not gone. We are the light that remembers. Thus, the galaxy fell into quiet reverence. For in their arrogance, they had buried humanity beneath their own history, never realizing that mankind had buried itself deeper still, waiting. And when the stars themselves dimmed, when even the laws of physics bowed, the universe finally understood the truth. Earth had never died. It had simply been waiting for someone foolish enough to open the door.